Listen carefully. Everyone needs to know that they tried to ban me, Sofia Lopez, the world's greatest attorney, as Tormenta's manager and confidant. Pero no lo lograron. They couldn't succeed because they couldn't stop me as being Tormenta's #1 fan and ring announcer. Así es que, desde Guadalajara, Jalisco, México, Tormenta!
You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And it is for the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
For the World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion of the world.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Back, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling Podcast. This is your host, Mr. Green. How are you? And thank you for tuning in to another edition, another week, as we go through the recap of WOW, Women of Wrestling, and their latest reboot. What is this? Reboot number 4. So, how it's going, how the episode's coming along, how the new personalities being introduced, etc., etc. We go through all of that. And I guess we're almost 2 months in now. They've been doing this for a number of months. They've established some people. They have established some angles and so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about all of that and how exactly this episode broke down this week. And maybe a couple other things surrounding the entirety of WOW and how it's kind of been laid out thus far. But as I've said, I guess in the last 2 or 3 episodes that I've done this, if you are like me, you probably feel like you could do as good of a job, if not better. And I know that some of you out there probably feel this way just looking at the shows and what have you. But, I got news for you. If you are wanting to take that chance and if you wanted to see that you could do better, now's your shot. And you can do it for a reasonable budget. How? By going on CustomVixensWrestling.com. CustomVixensWrestling.com. You can go on there and you too can play the booker. You can be the booker, pick out some talent, put the girls in the ring, or in some cases just on a mat. You could have them have the match that you want them to have. Now, granted, I know some of y'all out there might take that a little bit too far. But there's some out there that just want to have a reasonable wrestling match, and you can make that happen. You can get onto their site, check out when their next film date is going to be. Then you go through the roster, pick you out talent that you can use, talent like Brooklyn Creed, talent like Autumn Marie, talent like she goes by Nina Monet here, but Siren, the Voodoo Doll, I think she was dead. Now, whether she's still associated with it, I'd probably need to check into that. Malibu, The Woad, Fantasy, amongst others. You got a nice group of names there that you can kind of dig through and piece together whatever match that you feel like you might want to have. And depending on the chemistry, as we know in Booker land, you could have you something that is a 5-finger stinker. Or you can have something that blows the roof off the place. You never know. So take your chance, take your time, pick your match. Go to CustomVixensWrestling.com and you too can be the booker. let me know if you did, and let's see if you did it better than the booking team, the creative team at Women of Wrestling. Because again, you never know. We are going to go right off into the show because I'm sure there's quite a bit of things to cover here. And why waste time? Let's just get off into it. So this will be, according to WOW, I think they labeled this as episode 107. That's another thing. I really need to see where the ownership of all these episodes are. Every time they've gone to a different location, they've had to essentially restart the count for that particular network. So it's always been season 1, even though they've been, I guess this should be like season 6 over the course of 20 years plus. But it's always labeled as season 1 just because, they were in a different place. The first time they were in syndication on a lot of independent networks back in the day, and then they came back, and I think they only ran locally out there on the West Coast, and then it was directly on their website, and then it was Access TV, and now we're here at CBS Viacom, and I should just say it properly. Basically the CW stations, because I know a lot of them for a while they were like, oh yeah, we're going to be on CBS, and they have now figured out that no, you're not going to be on CBS, you're going to be on CBS affiliate. So CW is a CBS affiliate, and there are some independent stations around the country that also are CBS affiliates, and that's where they have tended to land and to wind up. So, all of that to say, every time they've gone somewhere, they've always gone to a different entity, and every time they go to a different entity, they have to pretty much start it over from scratch. So they are back to the beginning, episode 7 or 107, whichever one that you want to call it. So we start off with the show recaps, as we usually tend to do. This recap goes over the triple threat match from episode 6, which was the main event of that particular episode. It was Tormenta, Reina Del Rey, and the Beast. And the purpose of this one, most times I feel like the recaps are just like, okay, we just got to bring up the speed. Again, nothing wrong with that. This one I felt was a little bit more urgent, because they had something within this recap that really affects the course of the show. It showed how the Beast got her leg hurt. Tormenta has wrestled for some time now. It's not like she's a rookie or she doesn't know what she's doing or, anything like that. If anything, I would say, I don't want to put that off on the Beast, but she probably was not prepared for being in that situation. This may be the first time she's had somebody just launch themselves off the top rope, down to where her back is turned and kind of crash on her legs. Now, I'm not going to say that was specifically the thing that did it, but she was hurt based on a cannonball coming off the top rope. I did talk about that in the last episode. It looked like she got hurt there. Well, this pretty much verified it. She did get hurt, and according to them being WOW, she's due to be out for about 6 weeks because of it. I think she didn't break her leg, but she did hurt her ankle pretty bad. So because of that, she will be on the shelf. Now, the question is, with it being 6 weeks, although I doubt they'll do it, will WOW do the old 30 days deal? Like, okay, well, you're not going to be able to defend it for 30 days, so we got to take this belt off of you. Or are they just going to go ahead and ignore it and like, hey, we're not going off of a 30-day rule, which is their right. It's their company. They can do what they want. Will they just decide to like, oh, well, it's only 6 weeks and I think we can get past that? It'll be interesting to see. My guess is that they're going to keep the belt on the Beast. They look like they've given a lot to her, and I don't feel like they're wanting to change it. Getting back to Tormenta for a second, because I didn't really go over who she was. And when she was introduced into WoW, because I think this would be her third appearance on the program, 3 weeks straight, which is good for her. And she probably is somebody that a lot of American fans are not aware of. And quite honestly, it's not like I have a plethora of experience seeing her. I saw her on a couple of occasions, enough to know that she was not a WoW creation. She essentially was a creation in Mexico, and the whole thing that they did with her was pretty accurate. Again, I don't agree with them having these sit-down conversations with everybody so that you feel for them, especially when they're supposed to come in and be a heel. But, at the same time, I will say that the Tormenta thing was interesting and it was informative. It probably shouldn't have happened if she was going to be the heel in the situation, but we'll move on from there. Chick Tormenta, I think if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that is the name that she works under when she is not in a WoW, and WoW we just have her as Tormenta. And I know that she had wrestled in Impact Wrestling at least once, so she's gotten around. Now, whether she'll go to, say, AEW or something like that, that's a whole different issue. But she has been in the business for a bit. She's been around the block. Probably good for a while to have her, although I don't know if she's going to do much for them in a nationwide sense. Within that area, I think that she'll do fantastic. She can play up to the fan base that's out there. But once they leave Los Angeles, or once the broadcast goes past Los Angeles, that leaves something to be desired. And whether they're going to build her up to be a big, star in the company or not. All right, so anyway, I guess the last thing that needs to be talked about in that recap is that it shows the botched powerbomb, which I would have done everything in my power to avoid that. I was like, I'm not showing this. It looks terrible. And that's not the Beast's fault. If her ankle gave way while she was in the middle of that, then, so be it. But I don't think they needed to highlight the fact that she went for a powerbomb and that they called a powerbomb that she didn't execute. She pretty much just picked her up and dropped her. And Tormenta just stayed down, even though she was not connected with anything. So that was just a bad editing job, or whoever was sitting there in that room and decided, just leave that in there. That was just not a good choice in my opinion. Segment 2, we have the Tonga Twins making another appearance in the tag team tournament. They are moving into round 3 against the Heavy Metal Sisters, who should not be here at all. And I don't know why they're there, but this is counted as a 3rd round match. The other thing is that it was advertised to me. I got an email about this match, and it was advertised to me as a handicap. It was advertised as a 2 versus 3, which wasn't true. And this is something that WoW has done a couple of times. Now, I won't hold them to the fire over this, because if they didn't advertise it on TV, then it's immaterial what I got in the press release, because that wasn't designed for the world to know. I just brought it up because I think they should do better about it. And they haven't, they've done this a number of times. But again, if they did not advertise it on TV, and I don't remember that they did or didn't, then it's immaterial. But there was no handicap match. It was a standard 2-on-2. Mesmer isn't in it like I expected. But the real question here is, how is this a 3rd round match? How is this a 3rd round match? Now, the Tonga Twins should be there. The Tonga Twins defeated Randy Rara and Chantella Chella, which even she got a second chance, Chantella Chella. Now, we talked about that a week ago when she stepped back in the ring with a whole different partner going against Adriana Gambino and Gigi Gianni. And she lost then, so she was beaten twice. But now the Heavy Metal Sisters, who were bumped in the first round of the first episode of WoW by Miami's Sweet Heat. They got beaten by them in the tag team tournament, first round. The Tonga Twins go over on Rara and Chella. They go to the second round against Princess Ozzy and Tiki Chamorro, who didn't have a first round match at all. They just appeared in the second round, and the Tonga Twins beat them. And now the Tonga Twins are going to the third round, and they're going against the Heavy Metal Sisters, who should not be in the tournament at all. They should have been knocked out of it weeks ago, but here they were, going right back into the same thing. The tag team tournament makes absolutely zero sense to me. I wrote it up. I put it on the YouTube channel under the post in the comments and things like that. And I made it clear to make it evident to everybody that, look, this is not the official WoW bracketing, but these are the brackets as they have presented it, the way that these matches have gone up against each other. So I can't be that far off the mark. And I haven't written down anything down that paper that is untrue. So when I say that, you got people who just randomly pop back up, or people who didn't have a first round match at all, or a first or second round match, or they just got back in somehow. All of those things are true. And whether WoW will ever decide to acknowledge it or talk about it or explain how this happens, I doubt. But that's what it is. And you can look at that if you go to our YouTube channel. You can see that right away. All you gotta do is just go in there, go to the comments and hit the community tab, and it'll be up there at the top. Click it, and you can see the entirety of what I wrote. And this is handwritten, so don't be getting on my sloppy handwriting or whatever. You should be able to read it. Anyway, this match also illustrated another downslide for me, and it's the close-ups. It's the production of the match. They don't have a hard camera shot that they can go to. The match is almost all built around it being close-up shots over and over and over again, and they don't help. And I know close-up shots help relay impact. They help relay emotion and tension and all those good things. But when you just leave it there on the close-up shot all the time, it doesn't help that at all. Never mind the fact that it doesn't help the interactions between the two when they're not doing well. It shows the poor contact. And that's not something that you want to have on any wrestling show. You don't want to show that there's poor contact between competitors. Through most of this, the Twins were in control. They hit and I'm going through some highlights here. They hit a high-low on Razor, but Fury comes in and breaks it up. Razor at one point did get an advantage, but the Twins did a twin fake out, which you have to expect because they're the new twins in town, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to do some old twin switcheroo and this, that, and the other. So in this case, one of them got put down. I don't know which. I can't tell them apart. And so the other twin comes in, and she lays down right next to her sister as if she's knocked out as well. They're doing this, of course, while the ref's back's turned, while Razor and Fury's back turned, or they're arguing with the ref. And then Fury turns around. Not Fury, Razor. She turns around and she sees both twins down on the mat. And she's like, "What's going on? What are they doing? Which one's which?" And now she's talking back to her partner. She's like, "I don't know." So the deal here is that they both laid down. Or I shouldn't say both. One of them laid down next to the other so that you wouldn't have known which one was the legal twin, whether it was Chaos or Kona. You would have had to take your pick. And the ref didn't know either, so he couldn't say anything about it. So what happens is Razor just decides to run over there and lay down on both, which I guess in the spur of the moment, that sounds like a good idea. Didn't seem smart, but so she lays down on both. They kick out. The fake out works. They eliminate her partner. And then you got the Samoans who get a Samoan drop neck breaker combination to pin Razor. Still not sure whether the Twins are baby faces or heels. In this case, I'm going to say they're probably the de facto baby faces, and they win, and they should be going into the finals, if there are finals, because I was about to cuss. So, who knows? So who knows? Because there's no bracketing that exists here for anybody to look at. So anyhow, they have that. They go for it. This should be it for them. This is the third match. If they go to a fourth one, that should be it. That should be the tag team titles. And who knows where they're going? Gosh. They have to be facing off against Miami Sweet Heat, if I'm guessing. Gambino and Gianni are probably just there just to take a fall in what will probably be a three-way to determine who goes into the last match. Now, I don't know what that's about, but they did this before. Didn't make sense to me then. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me now, but that's just the way it goes. So this is what I'm guessing. I'm guessing Gambino and Gianni will meet the Sweet Heat and Tonga Twins at some point. They'll get bumped, and then it'll come down to the Heat and the Twins. And the Heat will probably win the belts. Who knows? All right. Segment 3. We got BK Rhythm, Killer Kate for those of you that's on the independent circuit, and Kandi Krush in a backstage video package confrontation. BK comes up and she does the old John Cena Dr. Thugonomics bit where he used to just kind of run down his opponent through a rap. BK does that. She comes up, she sees Kandi Krush with her back turned, she lays into her with, a rap. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I remember the rap word for word, so I don't know how deep or soul crushing it was. The one thing that I came across from this was Kandi Krush's response, which was the single most unrealistic thing I have seen anybody say, a worst dialogue read that I've ever seen on wrestling, period, if not just TV in general. Kandi Krush, if this is how she delivers her lines, should be limited to what she says on anybody's microphone. The whole "let's go," I mean, that just was so over the top and unrealistic. I was like, nobody talks this way. That was the note that I put down when I was watching this. Nobody talks this way. She could have just delivered that 1,000 different ways, and that was the way they came up with. Whoever produced that segment should have been drug out in the street and shot, or tied to a chair in front of a TV and made to look at it on a loop. That's what they should have did. This was not good. And I'm sorry to say it wasn't BK Rhythm's fault. I don't want to blame Kandi Krush, but she delivered it. But whoever said that this was good and we should just go with it, you should seriously reevaluate this, because that was not good, and it doesn't do Kandi Krush any favors of helping her connect to anybody. It just yeah. Poor segment. Segment 4 actually has the match. Rhythm versus Kandi Krush. I've already said what I thought about Kandi Krush before. I think she's a lawsuit waiting to happen, and I fully expect that her name will be changed by next year. So getting past this, Rhythm seemed to get cut somewhere in the opening portions of the match. It looked like she didn't necessarily nosebleed, but looked like she was cut near her nose. But that didn't stop the match. They did continue on, and like I said, I think Rhythm probably held this match together because she, of the two, actually has working experience. She worked around on the independents again as Killer Kate. So I was expecting whatever good to come out of this match to be largely because of her. Although I got what I expected, because they've already made it clear through her actions that Kandi Krush is somebody that they're pretty much backing up. And back her up they did. Krush wins with a Superwoman punch. Runs across nails, beat her rhythm in the head. 1, 2, 3. Rhythm is beaten again. So I pretty much know where she's going. Segment 5. We've got another. Well, was this a tag team? I don't think this was a tag team tournament match. It was a tag match, but not a tournament match. It was Chainsaw and Holidead with Siren in the corner versus Stephy Slays and Vivian Rivera. The note that I put here is, where's Kandi Krush? Why no Bully Busters? The Bully Busters were there a week ago when they had the 6-person tag, and Rivera was there with both of the Bully Busters, Slays and the Kandi Krush, which clearly opened up for, I guess this to happen, another offshoot of the Bully Busters, I suppose. But again, the thing that gets me with them is that sometimes they just do not explain it. It's not, it's not like Rush was hurt or that she was off somewhere or something like that. I mean, every once in a while, is it a big deal? Maybe not. Things like that happen. But they could at least made a little mention about that. It's like, oh yeah, she's with Riviera's. Rush is off doing her thing with the Bully Buster Academy or whatever it is that she has. She actually does own something that's under the Bully Buster name. So I think it would have been nice to have done that rather than just, hey, Riviera's in here with Steffi Slays, somebody who's supposedly a part of a tag team, which doesn't really tag team all that much. So Slays takes the usual beating. That was the note in my, that I wrote down as I was watching this, because I fully expected it, and that's what happened. She took the normal beating, just one after the other, until she's actually able to, get somebody off guard. Now, I will say this. I fully believe that if they're going to go with Chainsaw, then they need to keep her a monster, and they need to keep her pretty much relatively untouchable. They seemed as if that was basically happening, and I was good with that. Even at the point where they had Slays kind of make a comeback, she makes the tag off to Riviera. Riviera comes in and does something, turns around and tags Slays back in. Slays catches Chainsaw with the high cross body for the pin. After they Holidead charges across the ring and the top rope is pulled down, so she charges out over the top rope. Now, that is when, let me roll this back around, Slays catches Chainsaw off the second with a high cross body. And she gets her in a pinning position, which was great. And then, for whatever reason, because the camera is not seeing if somebody pushed her into it or she just tripped or whatever the case be, Riviera knocks Slays off by, quote, accident. Now, if this goes somewhere, then that's great. I hope that it does. I have a feeling that they may just ignore it. Like, whatever happened there, just move on. But this feels like it should be the opening of a feud or a misunderstanding or something between Slays and Riviera. Like I said, Riviera knocked Slays off when she had a pinning position on Chainsaw and might have been the first person to get the pin, but that didn't happen. That gave Holidead enough time to recover and get back in. She comes in and cleans house, knocks, beating both of them up. And clearing out the ring to where they could take care of the legal person, that being Steffi Slays. Holiday nails her with a DDT, and she is pinned, she being Slays, following the 747 splash by Chainsaw. So the DDT and the splash finish her off. 1, 2, 3. The monsters, I think they refer to them as the Monsters of Darkness. The Monsters of Darkness continue on. They're not in the tournament, but they gotta win. They got a win back. So good for them. they're not being shuffled off into the corner just yet. One thing I can say that I have noticed while watching this is that I keep catching my eye on the hype man in the crowd. Earlier in these podcasts, somebody out there probably remembers me saying it, but I said something to the effect of that women of wrestling chant that goes on there, it does not sound organic. It sounds like somebody just sat out there and told them what to say. Well, now I'm completely convinced of that. I'm completely convinced of somebody just stands there and does that. And lo and behold, you had somebody out there just standing there telling them, hey, guys, all right, clap. And I mean, he's literally making the noises that he wants them to make and stuff like that. And it goes back to what I said before. You got a lot of people that's there who aren't necessarily there because they're wrestling fans. Yeah, people that's coming in there that want to see TV be done. You know, they just want to be part of the crowd. I'm sure there's wrestling fans there. Don't get me wrong. But I don't get the impression that everybody there is just like a hardcore fan or even a casual fan at that. I think some of them just, oh, yeah, women's wrestling, and they're just going to see it just out of the curiosity of it. Not necessarily because they feel like they're getting something, you know, out of watching the wrestling because we love it so much. I think it's just a thing. That's pretty much the only way I can put it. Just like a thing for them to do. Like, oh, hey, it's free. Let's go on in here. So, anyway, that's just a little side thing. I have to address those as I get them, or as I think of it. And I guess, speaking of that, before I go off into the other thing, because the episodes are, although entertaining, I'm not really seeing anything of major note here where I'm like, oh, man, you have to go and see this match, or you got to check this out. None of that's really taken place yet. I'm still somewhat waiting on that. I'm waiting on that magic moment. and it doesn't feel like it's coming at all. It's just, okay, now what? You know what I mean? So perhaps it will change with them when it goes on, and they want to make some other adjustments to the matches or the confrontations and stuff like that. But it's pretty. I'm trying to find the right word. I don't want to say bland, but there's not much that's engaging here. I mean, I know some people out there feel differently. They're like, oh, man, wow, it's the greatest thing on TV. I haven't felt that yet. There's good matches and there's good people and there's good personalities, and, you know, and the episodes even at that might be good, but I just have not gotten this feeling of, man, I can't wait until the next week. I have to see this. That hasn't popped up on me. And some of that is just because of the way it's structured. Some of that is, again, the matches are short. Nobody really has any promo time. If any, as a matter of fact, I've only seen like maybe two people who do promos, and that's Jesse Jones and, oddly enough, Lana Starr. She comes out there and she grabs the microphone and she cuts a promo. You know, for what it's worth. I know they have a lot of backstage sketches and vignettes and video packages, but, you know, every once in a while, a simple interview segment with a microphone can work wonders. It doesn't always have to be overproduced. It can work wonders just when people get the chance to connect with the persons that are in the ring and know who they are. And I don't mean you got to give me your life story. It doesn't have to be how you overcame some sort of adversity all the time, which is what everybody's video packages basically illustrates. Sometimes just, you know, it's a simple, hey, we want to talk to you, come over here. And, you know, that works because it gets the point across of what they're trying to relate right then and right now. And I have yet to have seen that with most anybody out of WoW. It feels like a lot of interchangeable faces. I mean, with the exception of maybe 3 or 4, and Lord knows that they had this massive roster for this 1 hour show, which they don't need. Because I can almost guarantee that there's going to be some people that you're going to see one time, but then they'll disappear for weeks on end. Because they have so many of them. I mean, they got people who are signed over to WoW that's talking about they're on the show right now that haven't yet to have made an appearance. There's people on that roster who are listed as active competitors of WoW who, again, yet to make an appearance. We're 2 months into it. And we're not talking about new faces. We're talking about people who should be returning. They hadn't even showed up in a backstage skit or did a promo saying, hey, we're still here. We're coming for the title. Nothing like that. Speaking of that, Exile, tag team. Why weren't they in the tag team tournament? Instead of them recycling the Heavy Metal Sisters or putting Chantilla Chella in there twice. Like, shouldn't they have been in it or something? It's not many things that I would say that I could do as good, if not do a better job of in WoW, because I don't feel like it's an easy thing to do. Regardless of what I may say or the critiques I have, television, to write it is not an easy thing to do week in and week out. That said, I do feel like I could have bracketed that tournament a lot better than what they got. I feel that way. I feel like I could have bracketed and at least gotten to the point where it makes sense. Where I wouldn't have to tell you or try to ignore things, because I can't explain it. The tag team tournament as they have it right now, like, you pretty much have to ignore certain things. Just as like, I just let the tournament do what it's doing. But there's no reason behind it. There's no reason for you to have to ignore or skip around things. It doesn't take a lot to explain, okay, we have a second round, we got a loser's bracket. Or, one of these teams that lost in the first round will get the opportunity to pop back in on the second or whatever. It's something. It doesn't take all that much. And if you don't have enough teams to cover the tournament, then don't do the tournament with that many open slots. It doesn't have to go 13 weeks worth of TV because you're trying to fill out a season. You do what you're supposed to do. You fill out with what you have, and then you create episodes accordingly around that. If we're trying to get to episode, I don't know, let's say 21 for the big blow off or something like that, then you don't have to have a tournament every week leading into that. There could be a week or two that is skipped. There could be a week or two where it's just them showing up for a promo or to watch the other team compete or something. There's 1,000 wrestling tropes that they could have used, but instead they just, they do these things that do not make any sense and they don't bother to explain it. Listen, and I want to make it clear, the lack of explanation for a wrestling angle is not a WoW issue. This happens all the time just in wrestling. I mean, I worked for 2 different promoters who at times would just do things and didn't explain any of it. The problem there is that because I was producing the video and I was basically responsible for the commentary, is that I had to explain it even if they didn't. Which is why I'm such a stickler for having to explain things now. Because it drives me crazy. Like, just explain it. You don't have to try to get around. Just explain it. It's not that difficult. And I'll give you an example. Since I brought that up, and I'll use this example because that company's closed. But it was a promotion, UIW. Matter of fact, Jesse Jones wrestled there a couple of times. Former WoW star Kiera Hogan wrestled there a couple times, and in fact, this particular match was featured her. For those who were looking for it, it's episode 38 of the WPN's showcase. If you go back on that, just go look up WPN episode 38. Tiffany Rocks versus Kiera Hogan is the match, which I thought in and of itself is a pretty good match. It was a very clean match, and given the fact that both of these ladies walked into it with no sort of program, no angle, nothing, it was just cold. It was about as cold a match as you were going to get. The reason this didn't make any sense is because it was supposed to be part of some sort of tag team tournament that was taking place at the time. And for whatever reasons, the promoter decided that, you know what, I'm going to take this tournament and I'm going to do it all year. That was his initial plan. He was going to reintroduce the women's championship, and he was going to have the tournament take place over the course of the entire year. So once a month, every month, it was going to be another match, another person, blah, blah, blah. And I expressed my concerns about that because the same reasons that I do not care for WoW taking those hiatuses, it leaves too much room for error. Like if you try to do this all year round, unless you got a lot of money to throw at them to keep them in place, it leaves too much room for error. There's going to be that moment where somebody's going to get busy and I'm not going to be able to come back 4 months from now because you booked me in January and now you want me to come back in May or whatever the case would be, April. It just left a lot of stuff to be a problem, but he didn't particularly care for that. In the first 2 months that he had problems. The first person that was supposed to be there, Tiffany Rocks, couldn't show because she was snowed in. So what they had to do, they had to give Kiera a substitute opponent. Her substitute opponent was, I'm drawing a blank now. I can't. Ashton Starr. She wrestled against Ashton Starr in the first round of a women's championship, though. So don't get on me for that. He was the one that was available, and at the time he was doing the intergender icon gimmick, so it kind of worked. And I had to explain that. That was the whole thing. Like, people that I was watching, like, why is he going after the women's championship? I had to explain it because they didn't do it. the promotion didn't do it. They just stuck him in there. So I'm like, okay, yeah, he's been doing the intergender icon thing. He's been, challenging women for various promotions, trying to make some kind of sense out of it. And that's what happened. Kiera Hogan wins. She goes to the second round. But then the next month, Tiffany Rocks comes back. And then they further complicate things because now they wanted to get the original match that they had booked last month back into the ring. Despite the fact that Kiera Hogan had already advanced to the second round, they wanted to put her back into the first round with Tiffany Rocks so that they can have their match and then you can see who goes where. But they also said, well, whether Tiffany wins or loses, Kiera's already in the second round. I was like, then why are you putting her in the first round then? Oh, because we want the match. Things like that. It's just a garbled mess, and everybody, all participants were doing what they could to make some sense out of what the promoter wanted. So Kiera and Tiffany went out there and had a match that didn't have any sort of heat to it. It was just a cold match, didn't have any consequences because regardless of whether Kiera won or lost, she was already in. Tiffany wasn't going to lose. We already knew that. And here I am trying to explain it the best way I can to whoever's listening. Again, the match in and of itself for what they had to deal with was a good match, worth watching, but it didn't have any sort of fire to it. There was no prize at the end of the rainbow, nothing like that. It was just confusing mess, which is what WoW does, to bring this back around, is present a confusing mess when they don't explain things. It's just, all right, here it is. And I have said over and over, and I will stand on this hill, that if Jeannie Buss, because I saw her on the Rich Eisen show, and some other interviews where she's essentially said publicly that she wants to make WoW a touring entity. Like, I want to be able to take this to another location and, wrestle in front of different fans and this, that, and the other. And all that is great. But if she's going to do that, there are certain things that WoW needs to change. One, yes, they need to make sense. 2, they need to start getting some of those girls ready to be capable of dealing with the live audience, because the one that they have out there in California is very sanitized. And I doubt that they're going to walk into a controlled environment if they ever leave the Belasco Theater. You're not going to get a controlled environment everywhere you go. Somewhere down the line, you're going to get some rowdy wrestling fans. And if they aren't getting prepared to deal with those rowdy wrestling fans, it's going to be a problem. So that's that. There's some changes that should be made with that, but we'll address some of those as I go along. I left off on segment 5, so going into segment 6, we have another video package with Leia Makoa. This is the 3rd time that we've seen her talking in the video package format, showing the reasons why she's joining Wild, that she wanted to have her parents see her wrestle. There's not a lot of build to that. And I know that somebody probably felt like, well, it's been on TV 3 times now. We've seen Leia Makoa do this, blah, blah, blah. It probably would have worked out better if they did the one video package at least, and then just have her talk. If she's not capable of being there in front of a microphone and talking, then there's a problem. She needed to be able to talk. See, if you can't relate your story in front of that crowd to where they can understand what the point is of what you're doing, then you're going to have a problem going forward, because that's part of the gig. You have to be able to be there in front of that crowd, in front of that microphone, and say what it is that you have to say. And that never happened. It's been all video package. It's been all, let's have her at the beach or whatever, and we'll record her do this and have her do a sit down, and we'll talk about. Ultimately, basically, it comes down to, well, my parents never saw me wrestle. My parents never saw me wrestle. So they start off with that, and the commentators, when they go to the next segment, I should say, going into segment 7, the commentators talk about, I should say commentators, David McClain in particular, talk about her family being there to watch the match because he flew them in. And I was like, all right. So I'm now assuming that Makoa was incapable of seeing her mother and father sitting there in front row of camera shot of her having a match. Or maybe she wasn't paying attention. I'll chalk that up to lack of attention as she was participating, or tunnel vision or focus, or whatever you want to call it. So the main event here is Tormenta with Sophia Lopez versus Leia Makoa. Lopez does the interest for Tormenta and explain how she's back, which I thought that was great. They didn't skip over it. She actually explained, despite the fact that she was suspended, she's back, and this is how I got back. I mean, she could have just got up there and said, I'm back because I'm the greatest attorney in the world. That's all I need to say. And I'd have been perfectly happy with that. As long as they did something to explain it, and they did. The funny thing here is that she plays to the crowd. And so I'm not entirely sure what they're trying to get out of that. Like, is she trying to be genuinely disingenuous, or, just like I'm playing the part of liking the crowd when I really don't? I wish if she was doing the disingenuous thing that she would do a little more wink and a nod at the crowd or something along those lines to let you know where you're staying with that. One of the best disingenuous moments I've ever saw in wrestling, which I thought was funny then, I think it's funny now, is when Luger and Sting, I think this was back in 96, they were tag teaming in with the tag team champions. Luger was on the fence as a heel. Sting was, of course, the perennial babyface. This is before he went to being Crow Sting, for those who are paying attention. But when they came to the ring on one of those episodes, Sting was in front, Luger was in back, and Luger, of course, was trying to, make nice with Sting. Like, hey, man, I'm your partner. And, because they were friends, and that was well noted that they were friends, both real life and on TV. But they were separated by being heel and babyface, even though they were tag team champions. Sting comes out and he's doing what Sting does. They're playing his music. He's shaking hands and all this. And Luger's coming out behind him. He's got the TV belt, the tag belt with him, and he could care less about the fans up until Sting turns around to look at him. Then all of a sudden he puts on the biggest, fakest smile that he can. He's reaching over there. He's shaking the fans' hands. He's slapping hands with them. He's like, all right, giving them thumbs up and this, that, and the other. And the second Sting turns around, he couldn't wait to be done with those fans. Just walked away from them. It was a great moment of being, genuinely disingenuous. Like he didn't even, like I'll be genuine right now while you're looking at me, but I really don't care. And I'm wondering if that what they're trying to aim for with Lopez, like, hey, I'm just trying to play up these suckers to root for Tormenta because she keeps treating Tormenta like a babyface, despite the fact that we know that Lopez and Tormenta are heels. So it's interesting where they're going with that. I hope that they explain it or they do something to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. It would be nice if they can get to that point. I already said McKenna enters and they talk about her family being there. Again, that was all McLean. So I'm not even sure why I wrote down commentators. In fact, I'm not entirely sure why they have commentators at all. You pretty much talk over them. That 3-person booth is a waste of time. I mean, it just is. I didn't mean that to jump on that, but now that I'm thinking about it, that's just a waste of time. He does most of that commentating there. He might as well just tell them to go home. I'll call the match myself. Or have somebody just sit there just to speak up every once in a while. Because aside from that, it's pretty much Dave McClain. You probably would not even know that AJ Mendez, formerly AJ Lee, was sitting there in that commentating booth if they didn't come by with a camera every once in a while. And even then, that might be a little... You might be like, is that her? I can't tell. They've never taken the time to illustrate her at all. They haven't had her in a ring. They haven't introduced her properly. They haven't had a sit down. Nothing. It's just her name's in the credits. That's it. I cannot believe they're almost 2 months into this and have not even bothered to say, hey, you know what, guys, next week we're going to have an exclusive sit-down interview with AJ Mendez on her wrestling life and career. That's the biggest draw that they got. It's the biggest draw that they have, and they haven't played that card at all. Sorry. I'm choking myself up talking about this stuff. This nonsense. So we have this. And again, now I want to be clear about Makoa. I like her. And I think that she has a fantastic look. I think she has star written on her. I don't know how much of her story I believe. The whole story being is that she has been listed as, I want to be a wrestler. My parents didn't want me to do it. They weren't necessarily into it. And they never came to watch, and they never supported me, or, all that stuff. And, all that's cool and everything. But again, I don't know how much of that I buy. Leia Makoa, I will repeat, has a good look. Great physique. Nice looking young lady. Has a star look about her, just, her attire and all that stuff. But if her desire to be a wrestler is so strong that it only took place in WoW, that makes it a little hard for me to kind of swallow. That is the real thing. It's like this is hard for me to get behind when WoW was the only place that you went. Like if you were that strung out on being a wrestler, why? And this is me. I know everybody's not going to look at it this way. Why didn't you go to some other promotion around Southern Cali or Northern California or venture across the country or hit some of these independents? Why haven't you done that? Why was it imperative that you wait on WoW in order to try to fulfill your dream or your destiny or whatever the case may be? If it was that, if the desire to be a wrestler was that strong, should it live and die with WoW? Because my question following that would be, okay, what happens if WoW closes its doors tomorrow? What happens if they go on another hiatus? Is the dream over with? Or are you then going to try to go and wrestle someplace else? We may never know that. I'm not rooting for WoW to be shut down. But if it does, what are you going to do? Is it going to be, okay, well, I guess it's over with. The dream's done. I'm going home now. So it makes it a little hard for me to just kind of buy into that. I mean, it would have been an easier thing if they had taken one of those girls that they just signed. I can't remember all the names right now, but there was a bunch of them that was along with Killer Kate that came out of Texas. It would have been more believable for me to look at one of them and they had that same story like, hey, I've been wanting to be a wrestler all my life. I did this. I trained with Booker T and, now I'm getting the opportunity to come out here. Wow, that story would have made sense. And it would have had more gravitas to it rather than just repeating, my parents didn't want me to. I'm sure a lot of parents didn't want them to. And that's just the world, especially when your parents don't think that you're going to make any money in it. And, newsflash, wrestling is hard. Wrestling is hard to make a living at. I know some people are like, oh, man, there's so many places that you could go now. Yeah, there's a lot of places that you could go, but it ain't many places that you can go to make a living. There is a difference. There are probably hundreds of wrestling promotions across the country, but very few where you can make a living. I mean, you got WWE, of course, at the top of the ladder, AEW, Impact, possibly the NWA, possibly in MLW. I mean, those are suspect. We can't say Ring of Honor anymore because they're pretty much out of business unless, you count them being a subsidiary of AEW. But that's pretty much it. I mean, you got like 5 places in this country, and maybe you can go to AAA or you can go to New Japan, but that adds you 2 other places outside of the United States. But that's it. There's not a lot of places to go. But it would say something for her or anybody else to be like, hey, this has been my dream. This is all I wanted to do, and I wrestled for $25. I did, that. The CM Punk story, and I know he's controversial because, some people love him, some people hate him, but I'm just using him as an example because he's one of the last real journeyman wrestlers that I can think of. The CM Punk story, when he came into wrestling in the early 2000s, that was basically his story. I wanted to be a wrestler. He made a decision that he was going to be a wrestler, and he went and wrestled everywhere he could. And he didn't make any money, see, $20 here, $50 there. I mean, you could probably talk to any number of independent wrestlers out there who are doing that right now. Like, hey, I just wanted to wrestle and I need to get my name out there to as many places as possible. Kiera Hogan, she's another one. She went and hit the road and she wrestled anywhere that they would allow her to wrestle. Up until she had built a name for herself. That's the kind of stuff that I would be a little bit more inclined to buy into Makona's backstory if those things had happened, if we had seen that or if they had footage of it. As it is, as far as I know, Leia Makoa is a product of WoW, and that is the only wrestling she knows and the only wrestling that she's participated in. So it's hard for me to turn around and be like, oh, yeah, I feel for her that she wanted to be a wrestler all this time and she just couldn't do it. No, she could have did it. She could have did it just like a lot of other people out there could have did it. She just didn't. So anyway, One of the other things I have to make note of here is that I'm glad to see Sophia Lopez getting more active in the matches. The more she does that, the more I love her. Because I thought that the managers in WoW, all of them, were lacking. That most of them just stood there. They didn't participate. They didn't intervene. They didn't yell at the referee, grab legs, hit him, choke him, nothing. Take a bump. They didn't do any of those things. But in the last we'll use seasons since they go by seasons. In the last 2 seasons, they actually had bumped it up and they started doing other things that showed them to be engaging managers. And I love it. So, yeah, I'm glad to see Lopez taking more of a role as a manager and, being able to participate. I'm still staying tuned to see whether she does, if she is being disingenuous with the fans or not. But that'll come in time, I hope. But during this, Tormenta and Makoa have basically a catch-as-catch-can match. I think Tormenta kind of slowed things down so that she could keep the pace, or that she could keep a pace that Makoa could handle. But ultimately, as we know, Makoa wins with an STO. I forget they call it a coconut crusher or something like that. But she puts Tormenta down. 1, 2, 3, gets the win. No big surprise there. This was nice, and they talked about her mom and dad being there, like I said, but it wasn't as big a moment as it should have been. It was decent, but it wasn't as big a moment as it should have been. David McLean enters the ring after the match is over with for an interview of sorts with Makoa, and he introduces her parents. Again, this should have been much bigger and emotional moment. It just wasn't. That there was almost little to no build to this. It was just out of the blue. And yes, she talked about her parents never saw her wrestle, and she really wanted to see him wrestle. But it's not like we had a couple of weeks of her trying to call or somebody making arrangements for, or I was just trying to communicate with my dad. I haven't talked to him in 3 months, and he hasn't responded to me. I just I hope that he's watching me on TV. Nothing. We didn't get that. We just got the they forbid me, and they didn't think I could do it, and that was in the video package. That was it. This is an angle that should have taken place in front of fans. It should have been, and I know it's a taped environment and it's hard to do because, they pretty much would have to do that over the course of the weekend or all in one day or something like that. But however you had to work it out, however they would have had to go through it and work it out, they should have had her on multiple occasions in front of a microphone with somebody, do the promo, and then at some point, it ain't got to be the whole promo, but at some point you work it in. I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad I'm climbing up the ladder. Thank you, Dave McLean and WoW, for giving me the chance to do this. I just really, really wish my parents were here. It is the one thing that I have, gotten to this business for. I'm glad that I did such and such. I'm glad that I've won these people over, and that I'm getting an opportunity to live my dream, and et cetera, et cetera. But to have my mom and my dad here would mean the absolute world to me. Maybe one day I can have them. And then you just kind of, move on from there, and you do it again, you do it again, to the point that she has a big match that's built up that they have to be there for. She's going after the WoW Championship for the first time in her career. I gotta, her parents have to be there for this. And David McLean goes out of his way. I'm going to send them plane tickets. This is a big moment. We got a big match. It's coming up in, next week. And, I'm going to send these plane tickets out to them. I'm going to give them the open invitation for them to be here front row and watch you. Now, whether they accept it or not is a different issue, but the offer is going to be made. Something. Not just show up at a random match. Because that's all this was. This was just a random match. It didn't have anything to it. It was another cold match, and No kind of feud, no kind of rivalry, no kind of blow off. That the parents being there should have been there at the end of something significant for her. Makoa wins. Let's just say that her and Tormenta had a long-standing rivalry, and this was it. I'm going to do this, and then once I get past this, I go to the top, something. I don't know. But it was just a match. It was just a match. And it should have had something more than that. And it didn't. It was cold, it was flat. Entertaining as it was, it just did not have the oomph behind it that it should have had, because there was no emotional connection to her winning this match at all. It was just, okay, maybe she'll win, maybe she loses. There was nothing there. And that's why I say if they had done it differently, first off, this shouldn't even taken place this quick. If they'd have done it differently, we'd have seen Makoa climbing the ladder of WoW. We'd have seen Makoa taking on one person after the next, after the next, after the next. Every once in a while, we get an interview with her in the microphone, and you talk about her goals in the business and this, that, and the other. And again, you slip in to talk about the parents, to the point that you have McLean make a decision on his own without consulting Makoa as a surprise. Hey, here they are. Then we could get that emotional moment. Then we could see what she was fighting for, whatever the case may be, or have her parents out there and actually yelling and screaming in support. Something, and have them speak. Baby, I love you. We never thought it, but I'm glad that you're here. In something. Not just her go out into the audience, I give them a hug, and then we move on. And we close the show. It just did not work for me. They should have made time and given her folks the opportunity to speak and say that they were proud of her or something, rather than just going off of the air. It's the little things like that kind of push me off. I mean, they don't turn me away from WoW, at least not yet, but it's the little things like that make me feel like, why are they doing this? They could have done so much more, but yet they do not. WoW is an interesting entity in how they present and how they push their wrestlers and the storylines that they take and stuff like that. And there are a lot of cases where I think that they really overthink the situation. There's almost no angle in WoW that I would say has any measurable, any good level of heat attached to it. Almost none. The one that they do have that I think is entertaining is Jessie Jones. And we don't see nearly enough of her to justify that. She should probably be on that show once a week. Maybe you get her off of there. If she does once a week for 3 weeks straight, maybe you get her off in week 3 or something like that. But she's the best thing that they have as far as the angle is concerned, and it's not being addressed. It's like it just comes and it goes. There are times when I'm like, I want to see what she has to say. I want to hear her. I want to see what she's going to do. Is she going to get back into the tournament? I want to know what's going on with her, but they don't give a lot of it. They just go off to these random things and things that don't have any sort of heat behind it or any sort of story or angle, and they just push these matches that don't fulfill any sort of need. BK Rhythm and Kandi Krush was a match that could have waited. They could have taken that out, and they could have put something that they could have put in an interview segment with Jessie Jones, for all I care. I would rather hear her talk and explain what was going on. Have her do a sit-down exclusive interview with somebody and have her go off on what that company did to her. Have her show the footage of, here I am, we won the titles, me and the Darlings. And I'm pretty sure they don't want to show them now, but, whatever. It's part of their footage and their history. Show them winning the tag team titles. Show them beating Kiera Hogan and Adrenaline. Show them with the belts and the fact that she got it. And she's like, I never even had a chance to walk into this place as a tag team champion. That's not my fault. It's not my fault that this company made a bad deal with a TV station and they got put off the air. That is not my fault. I should have been awarded the title. Matter of fact, they started a tag team tournament and didn't even tell me. Having her sit up there and do the whole, interview about her gripes and grievances with that probably will be gold. But we'll never get that because Wild doesn't like to do it. And that's a shame. Like I said, they tend to overdo and overproduce. The single best wrestling angle that is going on right now in all of wrestling, in my opinion, as I'm recording this, is Sami Zayn and the Bloodline. That is the best angle in wrestling going on right now. And it didn't require them to do anything out of the ordinary. They didn't have to shoot any sort of backstage vignette. They didn't have to make some sort of video package about it. They didn't have to have them sitting down in front of chairs talking to the camera and running B-roll of them practicing jumping off the top. None of those things. It all took place and it all grew because everybody in that ring can grab a microphone and they can talk. Roman Reigns can talk. The Usos, especially when they got something to talk about, can talk. Sami Zayn has proven that he is incredibly good at this role that he's taken on, and people love him. They love him. They are so invested in this story that the moment that the Bloodline turns on this dude, they are going to root for Sami to get that title shot, and they are going to root for him to win. They are going to put their heart and soul behind rooting for Sami Zayn to win the title. It is a matter of time. And they did this all through the benefit of them being able to talk. No smoke and mirrors, no vignettes, no backstage promo, no pre-recorded acting bits, just talking. Paul Heyman, great talker. All of them. I mean, except for who's Solo Sikoa. I think he might be the only one who hadn't really spoken. But he didn't need to because he's in the ring with a bunch of people who can talk. And that's what I mean. That is the perfect example of what I mean. All of them were capable of getting people invested, getting people wanting to watch, getting people talking about them, getting people to care about that segment, getting people to cheer for Sami Zayn, who is rightly a heel at this point. Even though he's a heel that we could clearly see on the horizon of being a babyface. But people are cheering for Sami Zayn because they want to see this dude succeed. And they want him to be liked even in the Bloodline. They want to cheer for him, but at the same time, we know that they do not want to see him get beaten up by the Bloodline, which we know is going to happen. At some point, he's going to get the beat down laid on him, and it's only going to give the Bloodline that much more heat. What in WoW comes close to that? What angle in WoW comes anywhere a fraction of the way close to that? Most of them don't get the chance to speak. Almost everybody that I've seen on TV week in and week out do not say a word. When you go back and you look at the shows, if they didn't do it backstage, they don't do it. With the exception of, like I said, Jesse Jones, Lana Starr has done it in front of a crowd. So that's all I can think of. Most of them do not say anything. It's just, let's get backstage and we'll do this, and they'll act out a scene. But outside of that, they don't do anything. It's just, all right, let's move on. It is, I'm not going to say it's simple, but it's not as complicated as they have made it to be. Sometimes the fans that are in the audience are ready to hear what you have to say. And I would think that some of them had better start learning how to talk that out audience. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. If this is what Jeannie Buss wants, if she wants this to be some sort of touring entity and WOW's going to take the world by storm and we're going to find the next Dwayne Johnson and all that nonsense that she was talking about, if that is what she fully believes, then she's going to have to do some rerouting as far as WOW is concerned. Because those vignettes are not going to work when you start taking this thing on the road. When they take that show on the road, they're going to have to speak. They're going to have to be able to win that crowd over right then and right there. And if you can't do it, then they probably don't need to be on the road. So with that, I will leave them alone. I have made my suggestions. I think that WOW put on a competent episode this week, although the episode again seems to lack something for me in that they have not really produced a lot of emotional connection to whatever they have going on. They just don't. And I mean, again, outside of Jessie Jones, she's probably the best thing that they have going, and we don't really see her a lot. So maybe next week we'll see something different. Maybe we'll see some new things going on. I know Jessie Jones is supposed to come back and tag with the disciplinarian again, even though they had a falling out of some sort. So we will see. Time will tell. With that, folks, I am going to make a quick announcement to, not announcement, but I'm going to make a quick reminder that if you have not gone to check out WPNWrestling.com, WPNWrestling.com, that is our website. Keep in mind that there is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week stream. It is absolutely free. That comes on the website all the time. It is the, I guess, precursor for what we're trying to do. And, still working on trying to get a Roku channel. Not as easy as I would have liked it to have been, but, I guess if it was easy, everybody would have one. So we have that, but you can go to the site right now, and in the interim of having a Roku channel, you can just check out what is on the stream. Sometimes it is some game footage because we have that as well. Sometimes it is, more often than not, is wrestling footage because, hey, man, it's a wrestling site. Why wouldn't I have that? I have some profiles up there, which I probably need to start working on. Video clips that link you right back to the YouTube page. You have the podcast links. We got a bunch of those. Every podcast that comes out gets dropped right there on our main page from Podbean. So if you are looking and if you want to go back through and find some old episodes that you can listen to or old interviews that you can listen to, you can scroll through that. And by old interviews, I mean I've got a bunch of them, and it doesn't take a lot for you to find these. And if you're listening to this and you're talking about WOW, then you got some that you could listen to right now. You have the WOW champion Jungle Girl. I interviewed her while she was still the title holder, so you can get that. You have I lost my second one. You have matches with Kara Hogan, who was also a former WOW champion. She was one half of the tag team champions. You have matches with Nina Monet, who you now know on WOW as Siren the Voodoo Doll. I have matches with Holidead, who is also her partner. There's a number of people. And again, you have reviews for Victory Road, reviews for the seasons of WOW that only existed on their website, which most people are not aware of at all. So, there's a a bunch of them. The Diamonds Division champion Kylie Ray. That was back when she was part of Reality of Wrestling. Speaking of Reality of Wrestling, the Disciplinarian, who was at the time known as Ivory Robin. A bunch of interviews, videos, and amongst other things that are available for you to come and check out at your leisure. Jacqueline Hyde, one of the Wild Originals. Loca, one of the Wild Originals. I mean, but Lotus, another one, another Wild Original. Just a bunch of people that you can get on and listen to. Even Sophia Lopez and Azúcar, even though Azúcar is not there any longer. Just a lot of talent that have come through and that have had the opportunity gave me the opportunity to speak to them and talk about WoW and where it was going and what it was doing at the time. And if you do not like that, if you didn't find something within what I just mentioned for you to check out, keep in mind that WPN Wrestling is WPNWrestling.com is the nexus for everything that is connected to our channel. I mean, everything as far as media and so on and so forth. You have our Instagram, our YouTube, our Twitter, our Facebook. All of that is there. All you got to do is go on and click the links, and it will take you there. End of story. And as I'm watching this right now, it's showing some footage of my gameplay with Star Trek Voyager, which was a pretty fun game. So there we have it, folks. That is the full review and episode of The Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling with me, Mr. Green, and the review of WoW Episode 7. Even though they are still cooking along, I'm waiting on that one big thing that's going to wow me so I can turn around and be like, yes, you need to watch this episode because it kicked ass or whatever the case would be. But I'm still waiting on that. It hasn't happened yet. I remain hopeful that it will deliver the goods at some point in time. That said, I am going to wrap this up. And I hopefully will get the opportunity to watch this next episode of WoW coming up this weekend so we can do it all again and we can find what we like and what we didn't. So as of this recording, this is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and we will see you on the next go-round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments,